We're working with solving the rational equations here. We're trying to find out what the value of v is in this case. And the very first thing that we need to worry about is trying to find what the lowest common denominator is here. Well, on these two I have two quadratic expressions. This one I just have a binomial. So these two quadratic expressions, what I'm going to need to do first is factor these. And when I'm factoring these, I need to figure out two numbers that multiply together to give me -8, but add together to give me +2. So those two numbers, the -8 would be 4 and 2. One of them has to be negative and the 2 would be negative. So that if I factor those two, I'm going to get a v plus 4 times v minus 2. Okay, and that's this is the exact same thing that I wrote up here. The only difference is I factored these two. Well, by factoring these, I can easily identify what my lowest common denominator is now. It's a v minus 2, that's in all of those, and a v plus 4. So the lowest common denominator here is v plus 4 times v minus 2. Well, that becomes crucial with this because what we're going to do next is we're going to multiply each one of these parts by that lowest common denominator. Alright, so let's bring that in now. I'm going to write these in blue. The blue portion is the lowest common denominator, just to try to make it a little bit easier to see visually. And you notice I multiplied each one of the tops by that, the numerators. And I did that because this is, if we're multiplying each one of these, this is the same thing as v plus 4 times v minus 2 all over 1. So if I'm going to multiply each section by that, it would end up being on the top. The reason why I'm doing this is so that we can eliminate our fractions. We don't want fractions. Those are a little bit more difficult to solve. So you'll notice here I have some values on top and bottom that I can start crossing off. And as I cross these off, you'll end up having nothing left on the denominator on the bottom. Alright, so I've got a v plus 4. Let's start over here. I've got a v4 plus 4 on top and bottom. I cross those off. Those are gone. Next, I have a v minus 2 on top and bottom. I cross those off. I'm left with just a 3 there. Over here, I have a v plus 4 on top and bottom. Now, notice I've got parentheses here, meaning this entire quantity. I can't just cross off this v and this v. That doesn't work. I've got to be able to cross off the entire quantity altogether. Then that does work. So I cross those v plus 4 on top and bottom off. I also have the v minus 2 on top and bottom. I can cross those off. That leaves me with my v squared minus 5v. Finally, over here I have a v minus 2 on top and bottom that I can cross off. That leaves me with a v plus 4 times 3. Alright, now I'm going to write this. You notice all of these are gone now. I don't have any more fractions. All my denominators are gone. So that kind of gives you your first clue that you're kind of doing it on, you're on the right path, hopefully. Alright, now we bring those down with what I've got left. I had the 3 left over here, the v squared minus 5v, and then over here I have a v plus 4 times 3. Now I see this, I need to kind of simplify this a little bit. I need to distribute that 3 to the v and the 4, so let's do that first. Alright, that gives me 3v plus 12. Now you'll notice over here I changed the order, only because we're used to seeing it in standard form, which is the v squared minus 5v plus 3. I just moved the 3 over here. I didn't change any of the values, just kind of wrote it in the correct order is all. Alright, now I need to get all these on one side. I can choose whichever side to put it on. You always want to try to, with this v squared, to keep that a positive. So we're going to move all of these onto the other side. So let's move our 3v over first. I'm going to subtract 3v from both sides. 3v minus 3v will give me 0. And negative 5v minus 3v would give me negative 8. So I've got v squared minus 8v plus 3, then I've got my 12 left over. Let's move the 12 over. I subtract 12 from both sides. That leaves me with v squared minus 8v minus 9 equals 0. Alright, well now that we have that, we can plug that into the quadratic formula and get our two answers. We can also factor this one. In order to do that, we would find two numbers that multiply together to give us negative 9, but add together to give us negative 8. That would be a negative 9 and a positive 1. So we can factor those two. That would give me a v minus 9 times v plus 1 equals 0. Now let's move these over just so that we have some room to work for the moment. In order to pull this off, we would actually set each one of these components equal to 0. So that would be a v minus 9 equals 0. And then a v plus 1 equals 0. And we can solve each one of them individually. We'll start with this one. In order to do that, we'll need to add 9 to both sides. Then we find out v equals 9. To do the v plus 1 equals 0, we're going to subtract 1 from both sides. We find out that v equals negative 1. So v equals two answers in this case, 9 and negative 1. Now we have to plug both of those back in to make sure that they're going to work for this one. The biggest thing is to make sure that we don't have zeros on the denominator. 9 minus 2 does not give me a 0. Negative 1 minus 2 does not give me a 0, nor does it if we plug it into these. So this one does indeed work, though you'll end up with two answers on this particular one.